All right. So last time I started describing what a hidden Markov model is. It has basically, when a hidden Markov model is given to you, it should provide a set of states. Okay, we have a set of states. Let's use the same terminology here on the slide. S is our set of states. So we have a set S, which contains the set of states. Si indicates the ith state in this hidden Markov model. We are also given the probability of starting in state Si. So this Pi is given to us. Pi is a discrete probability. Actually, this pi is a discrete probability distribution over all states. And pi I, do you have any questions? Yeah, pi I indicates the probability to start at state Si. Okay, so pi will be probability mass function over all states where its outcomes will be the states. All right, so if this is state 1, state 2, state 3, and state 4, in other words, this pi will give us what is the probability to start at state 1, what is the probability to start at state 2, 3, and 4, so forth. Okay, so it will have 4 possible values, P1, and summation of all PIs, these pi i's, they are going to be equal to 1. So it's going to be a probability mass function. Okay, so we may have a designated start state in certain hidden Markov models. One of these states is always the state that we start our time series event observation. For example, if the state 1 is always the start state, in that case we are going to have pi 1 is equal to 1, and all the others, pi I is not equal to 1, is going to be equal to 0. So by assigning probability 0 to all the other states other than the designated starting state, you can achieve this. Okay, but in general, hidden Markov models allow you to have to start at different states with certain probabilities. So we have starting probabilities. The most other two important parameters of a hidden Markov model are these transition probabilities. So we have transition probability. So the probability, let's see what we have. So the transition probability, we gave it the name Aij. So this Aij denotes the probability of going from state I to state J from time step t to time step t plus 1. So what is the probability to go from, for example, A1 to will be to transition, the probability to transition from state 1 to state 2 in a certain time step. When you're currently given that at time t1 you are currently at state 1. For example, if we are currently at time t is equal to let's call it like this, given that we are currently at time t is equal to t and we are currently at state 1, the probability that we are going to be at state 2 at time point t plus 1, okay, and the next time step, let's call this, no, I couldn't write it in this small place, in the next time step and t plus 1, the probability that we are going to be at state S2 is given by this probability A12. All right, so this one, given that you are currently in state 1, what is the probability that you will be in state 2 in the next time step? This is what this probability gives. And this one is also given that you're currently in state 1, this conditioning, all the possible outcomes, whether you're going to be in state 2, state 3, state 4, this is also probability distribution over all the states. In other words, you can also think about it like this. If you're given this, see the Markov model as a state diagram like this with arrows with directions, and when these arrows indicate transition properties from state 1 to state 2. In other words, the fact that this is a probability distribution means that the summation of edge weights, if the transition, so this, if this is A12, if this is A13, and if this is, if this is A14, and if this is A13, the summation of all these should also be equal to 1, as this is a probability distribution over these states. So when you're at a state, by the way, self-transitions are also possible. A11 may be a non-zero probability, but all the outgoing, the weights, the probabilities on the outgoing arrows from state, they also need to add up to 1. Those are our transition probabilities. And when we are at a state, we emit certain symbols. So apart from the states themselves, so the states may have a different alphabet, the state may indicate different things. We also observe certain actions or symbols when we arrive at a state. And the symbols that we observed at a state is not a single symbol. It may be a probability distribution over all the possible symbols. So for example, if you're at state 4, you're going to emit, you may emit all ACGTs with certain probabilities. This will be a probability distribution, the emission probabilities, which are usually indicated by 2 subscripts, the state number, emission of, for example, this E, S1A will indicate the emission probability of observing symbol A at state S1. Okay, so here they are indicated. So this omega here, the lowercase omega, may be a symbol that you observe at the state. Here in this figure, we see Y1, Y2, and Y3 are the emitted symbols, and they are emitted with probabilities, for example, B1, B2. And what I'm saying is that at X1, we may observe multiple symbols with certain probabilities. So that's what a hidden Markov model is, mathematically. So what type of questions we can ask and then answer about the hidden Markov models? I'm going to talk about that next. I gave the zebra example, right? If you remember the inner state, whether the zebra is angry, afraid, those may be our states, and those states are basically, they're different than the actions that we observe: running, drinking, eating, sleeping, standing, lying down. Those are actions that can be observed, and the emotions, or what the zebra, are the things that we can't observe, and they may be the actions may be outcomes of certain emotions. Okay, so in hidden Markov models, basically we model the behavioral behavior of a zebra with that, and the states which are hidden from us will be the emotions, and the things that we observe are the actions. And usually we ask questions: given a certain sequence of observations, given a certain sequence of actions, what is the most probable set of emotional states which are hidden from us? We are going to basically infer those, predict those. What is the most probable set of inner states that could have produced these actions? Will be one question we will be asking. And we may also ask, given a behavioral model of a zebra, we may also ask, what is the most probable sequence of actions of this model? So it's like, what is the expected behavior of a zebra that has this model starting at a certain time point? Don't forget, all these hidden Markov models, they model a sequence of events, sequence of actions that are output of this. And the sequence of, we may be observing, for example, 24 different time points in a day. For example, every hour we may observe an action, and the number of observations is not necessarily equal to the number of states, because we can continue going between states again and again, and therefore we may have an arbitrarily long output of a hidden Markov model that is given to us like this. Now I'm going to talk about a different example, which is on the slides, and before. And this is going to be an example from Wikipedia from a couple of years ago. The Wikipedia article may have been edited and it may no longer have this same example, but it's a simple example to understand what we ask of the Markov models, how sometimes it's difficult to answer these probabilities and some other related questions. Okay, so we usually model a temporal process, the process that changes with time, like the zebra's behavior in a day, what it's doing every hour. And the output, usually we observe the actions, but we don't know the actual underlying mathematical or physical model, but we have some kind of, we may have built that behavioral zebra model from data that we have collected, and we may have collected a model that fits best this one. Okay, so I'm going to close my window. Yeah, so it's nice springtime finally, and more noise is coming from my outside. So I'm going to close the window so to get rid of some of the noise. All right. So I already mentioned this. Now, the problems associated with hidden Markov models, the questions we can ask, I asked some of those actually. Given a model, we can compute the most likely, the probability of a particular output sequence. So this is like if you observe a zebra for a day, you can compute the probability. How probable is this outcome that is observed we have here is coming from this outputs, this hidden Markov model. There's a forward-backward procedure to solve this. It's actually very similar to the Viterbi algorithm. The only thing is, instead of finding the most probable sequence of states that could have produced that output, asking this probability is basically it's the summation of all possible sequence of states that have produced this output. So if we sum all the probabilities that can produce a certain sequence of actions, that's the overall probability of observing these actions from that hidden Markov model, if we sum them. If we find the maximum, if we look at, again, all the possible paths that could have produced these set of outcomes, but we select the best, the maximum probability of these sequence of states that produce this output of actions, this gives us the most likely sequence of hidden states that have produced the outcome. So we are going to basically be using the same dynamic programming algorithm. And when we replace our max term with summation, we will be answering this problem. If we keep the maximum best path that have produced an output sequence, we will be solving this problem. There is also a third problem, which is like the finding of the hidden Markov model, building the hidden Markov model in the first place. So who gave us that behavioral model of the zebra, right? How do we know the transition probabilities from, for example, after it gets hungry, then it gets tired. Okay, being hungry and being tired are some emotional or inner states. What is the probability of transitioning from hungry to tired? Who says that it's 0.5 probability? So this is the parameters of the hidden Markov model usually are inferred from some collected data. If you observe a zebra for a number of years, a zebra family, a number of years, you can actually infer those probabilities by training a hidden Markov model. This is a training step, and there's an algorithm to do that. There's an expectation maximization based algorithm, Baum-Welch algorithm, which finds the hidden Markov model that fits your data best. All right, but we're not going to see the details of that algorithm in this course. in this case, when we build the hidden Markov profile hidden Markov model for biological sequences, we will already have some simple rules to build the hidden Markov model directly from multiple sequence alignments. So we are going to assume that a multiple sequence alignment of a certain family of sequences is given to us. And after that, we will just do some counting. We are going to compute these transition probabilities, emission probabilities by simple counting and computing frequencies from the multiple sequence alignment itself. So this part, in our case, in profile hidden Markov models, it will be very simple. It will be very easy to actually do that for our case. But this part, for solving the first and second questions, we will see a dynamic programming algorithm called Viterbi algorithm. The Viterbi algorithm will be the most. It will be a little bit more complex than pairwise sequence alignment, but it's still the same dynamic programming. Similar, not same, but similar dynamic programming recurrence relation, which is two-dimensional. So we will be filling in a table. All right, so any questions up to now? All right, let me continue with our first example from Wikipedia, which is this. So we have this is our story. We have a friend to whom we talk daily on the phone. Our friend is only interested in 3 activities: walking in the park, shopping, and cleaning his apartment. The choice of what to do is determined exclusively by the weather on a given day. And we have no definite information about the weather where our friend lives. So he's probably in a different city. And we don't have access to AccuWeather or watch the news weather channel to see how the weather is like in the place where our friend lives. But in other words, we don't observe the weather pattern, the weather condition in the city where our friend lives, but we know what our friend does every day by talking to him on the phone. Okay, so we talk to him on the phone, and for each day, he tells us a single activity that he did for that day. Okay, so in other words, we have a hidden Markov model that looks like this. We have some states, okay, maybe, or let me write them like this. Sunny, so a big nice state for sunny and a smaller state for the rainy day, which we don't like that much, right? So here, rainy and sunny. So if today is rainy, tomorrow may be sunny with some probability. If today is rainy, tomorrow may also be rainy with some probability. So we have these transitions. We may stay at a sunny day and we may go from sunny day to rainy day. Okay, and which state are we going to start in? What is the probability to start in a rainy day? What is the probability to start in a sunny day? It's like on average, how rainy is this city or in a day? If you don't know anything, what is the a priori with no knowledge at all, knowing what today is or what type of day we have today? What is the unconditional like probability of starting with a rainy day or starting with a sunny day is again something we should figure out depending on the general weather trends in the city that our friend lives. All right, so these are you may say pi rainy and pi sunny are starting probabilities. And also don't forget that our friend does 3 activities. So these are the symbols that are emitted from these states. What were they? Shopping, cleaning, and walking in the park, right? So I'm going to abbreviate those as shopping, cleaning, S, C, and W, and walk in the park. And shopping, walking, and walking, shopping, cleaning, and a walk in the park. So these are the things that we need. If we're given the hidden Markov model, we should be given. Actually, I tried to draw everything by head, but there is also already one that is drawn here on this slide. I'm going to get back to pencil mode. So this is how the hidden Markov model is going to be given to us with all those parameters. So if today is rainy, The probability to be rainy tomorrow is also 0.7. And starting in a rainy day is 0.6, while being a sunny day is 0.4. So our friend probably lives in England, right, with mostly rainy days and continued rainy days, and seeing the sunshine has a lower chance. And when day is sunny, our friend walks in the park with 0.6 probability, 0.3 probability, and with 0.1 probability, he cleans his apartment. And if it's a rainy day, it's mostly cleaning, and then maybe some indoor shopping, 0.4. And if it's rainy, a walk in the park is low probability. Okay, so this is how a hidden Markov model looks like. Now, here is a problem that I'm going to show. We'll try to answer. Okay, so it's on the next slide. Now, imagine we have talked to our friend for 3 days. For 3 consecutive days, we have talked with him, and he told us that the first day he walked, the next day he shopped, and the last day he cleaned. So this is our observation. Walk, shop, and clean. Okay, I'm going to write it here. Walk, shop, and clean. So these are our observations. Okay, now the question that we ask is, what is the most likely sequence of days that could have produced this outcome? Okay, so you may start that, oh, okay, walking in the first day, walking has a higher chance here in sunny, so this may be a sunny day, and then shopping has the highest probability in rainy day. We can have rainy here, sunny, rainy, and then cleaning. Again, it may be, so these sequence of states, sunny, rainy, rainy, may be the most probable set of things. But you see what I did here in my greedy approach, I ignored the transition probabilities and just used the most likely, the highest probable event at each day, actually not consider what is the probability to go from sunny to rainy, or what is the probability to go from rainy to rainy. So in order to be able to assign a probability to this one and indicate that this is the best possible, most probable sequence of weather conditions in those 3 days that could have produced this outcome, walk. By the way, this S and this S are different. This S symbol means shop. This S symbol in the weather condition means sunny, right? Don't confuse these two. I use these acronyms here. But what I did was, in order to assign, for example, what is the probability of these 3 things, sunny, rainy, rainy, and in these days our friend did these things. So what is the probability of the specific outcome in this weather condition and activity space, and considering all the possible weather conditions, all the possible activities that we can do in these days, consider the sample space of these 3 days. The probability associated with the specific thing is, I mean, this is already fixed, but it could have been a sunny, rainy day, and we could have shopped, clean. Okay, that's also in the sample space. But the probability associated with the specific outcome, the single outcome, is this. I'm going to compute the probability. First of all, the probability to start at a sunny day is 0.4 probability. So 0.4, 0.4. Let me actually go to GIMP, which I can write better in this annotate pen is difficult to write with. Okay, I'm going to come to this and now show you how we can compute the probability of that sunny, rainy. And also let me just copy this so that I can use it as a reference. So I think I copied it right for, maybe where is it? Yeah, right here. Is it? Can I just paste it here like this? Yeah, it's already in the clipboard. Yeah. So let me move this to here as a reference for myself. And I'm going to flatten the image. Now I can right here. All right. Now, I was wondering about sunny, rainy, and walk, shop, clean, right? Yeah, thank you. I just saw your comment on it after I pasted it. Yeah. So sunny, rainy, walk, shop, clean. So starting in a sunny day is 0.4 probability, right? And then walking in a sunny day is 0.6 probability. And then the next day is rainy. So I came here, I emitted this symbol. Then from sunny, I went to a rainy day. What is the transition probability? Another 0.4. Okay, and in that rainy day, I shopped, which is another 0.4. The emission probability of shopping in a rainy day is 0.4. Then from rainy day, transitioning to another rainy day is 0.7. And in the final rainy day, I cleaned 0.5. So the probability that you see here is the probability of this specific outcome in this very large sample space. As you can see, since we're multiplying all numbers, probabilities that are between 0 and 1, this is going to be a very small probability indeed, right? I mean, although this may be the most likely path that produced this outcome, this probability is going to be very small. But what we're interested in is that out of all possible, it could have been sunny, rainy, sunny, this one, sunny, rainy, sunny. Okay, so there are actually, since there are only two states, I have, there can be 2 to the 3 different 2 times 2 times 2. So 3 days, 3 consecutive days. So there are a total of 8 possible different weather conditions I could have observed those days. And for all those specific ones, I can compute a probability like this. And the maximum out of these 8 cases will give me my most intelligent guess of what those three weather conditions in these 3 days are. All right. So, but as you can see, when I computed this, what I did was I started with the starting probability, then emission probability, transition probability, emission probability, transition probability, and the emission probability. So I multiply these probabilities along a path. So you start here, you come here, you emit something, you move. So all these probabilities are multiplied along a path to compute the probability of a very specific outcome. And if I'm asked what is the most likely sequence of days, I should just compute this for all these possible cases. The first day may be rainy. I also have these, right? SS, SR, RS, and RR. So these are all the possible 8 cases I could have observed, and you can compute the probabilities for all to compute the max. By the way, this approach obviously is not very feasible when you have large sets of states, a large set of states, many states. For example, if you have 10 states, and if you're looking for a time time sequence process, time series process of, for example, 20 days, all right, it's going to be 10 to the power 20, which may be a very large number, and computing these probabilities for all of them may be infeasible, intractable, all right. And usually we have we model these even for longer time points and more than 20, and the number of states may be more than 10 in many cases. So this may be infeasible, such an exponential looking at all the possible outcomes may be infeasible. So we don't do it like that. Viterbi algorithm is going to be nicely polynomial on the number of states and the number of time points. If I have this many time points, I will be able to compute the most likely sequence of outputs that could have produced this with time complexity quadratic is a multiplication of the number of states and the time points. So this is what we are going to see later. All right. So, but we can ask questions like, what is the most likely sequence of days that could have produced the outcome? Also, when we ask, what is the overall probability of these observations? In other words, you may be saying, for example, walking, shopping, and cleaning in 3 consecutive days. How likely is observing these 3 activities? It's actually the summation of you have to sum everything you have computed on all those possible days. They are all possible, right? For example, it could have been rainy, sunny, sunny. Rainy, sunny, sunny. What is this probability? 0.6, starting at a rainy day, and then walking in a rainy day is 0.1, but it's still non-zero. And then the second day is also rainy. It's 0. So I'm currently trying to compute rainy, rainy, sunny. Rainy, rainy, sunny, 0.6, 0.1, 0.7, and shopping in a rainy day, 0.4, and going to sunny day, 0.3, cleaning in a sunny day, 0.1. So this is another probability that we have, the probability of the outcome in which our friend walk, shop, clean in a rainy, sunny day. This will probably be smaller than this, but it's still a non-zero probability. If we sum all these things, it will give us the overall probability of observing walk, shop, clean. In other words, we can by this way we can compare whether walk, shop, clean is more likely compared to shop, clean, for example. This may be a more likely activity in random 3 consecutive days than these activities. So you may be wondering about, well, is this walking, shopping, cleaning, what has anything to do with protein sequences, right? And you may be right. We are going to jump to protein sequences directly by trying to model a family of sequences by using profile hidden Markov models. So this is not a general profile hidden Markov model, but it basically tells us that a sequence, a protein sequence, is nothing but also like a time series event. There's an N terminus, C terminus. So in other words, there's the protein sequence has an order, a beginning and end, which can be considered. Each of these positions in the multiple sequence alignment column, the first position, second position, third position, they can be considered as time points. And if you look at something like this, if these are our states, which indicate positions in the alignment. For example, this is the first position, this is the second position, this is the third position, this is a likely 4th position, or maybe this is a 4th position. So this is something interesting. It's like an insertion, but with some probability. Or you may also consider this as a deletion with some probability, okay? But if you look at this and try to, exactly, these emission probabilities are the codon usage. I mean, they are actually the nucleotide usages in a particular position. For example, in position 3 of this family, I have 80% A and 20% T. So it's most likely, just consider the sequence logo, the profile representation we have, which was this big capital letter fonts that show which parts were conserved. It's very similar to that. As you can see, if I tell you what is the probability to observe A, G, C, let me write that here, okay, A, G, C, and then maybe T and another C. Look at the sequence. What is the probability that this single sequence belongs to this model? What we will do is something very similar to that weather pattern. So you're always starting from this, okay? So since this is the first position, our starting probabilities to start at this state is going to be 1, and starting probabilities at all the other states are going to be 0. But you're going to see this is not a very good way to model certain events like deletion, match states, and insertion states. We are going to actually have to identify, given a multiple sequence alignment, we are going to be we will need to model things differently, different parts of that alignment differently. Which parts are, what's the match state? The hidden Markov model is going to be used to represent conserved regions, non-conserved regions of a sequence profile. Actually, we can directly work on an example for that. In the last 15 minutes, I'm going to show you an example on what I mean and how we are going to build something for that. But yeah, actually, there's an example. So this may be a hidden Markov model built for this alignment, but we're going to, as I said, have certain types of states that are used to model certain parts of this alignment differently. If a column, for example, if an alignment column, if an alignment position is conserved like this, we are going to have a single match state designated for this column. If there are certain parts that are deleted a lot or inserted, we are going to have, or maybe the actual deletion will be a specific state for which, if a sequence doesn't have this conserved column in it, imagine there's a new sequence which doesn't have this A in it. It's not a, it's like there's a gap in that sequence against this A. But by the way, let me, I forgot to change my mouse pointer size. So if you look at another sequence right under this A, there is a gap for this other sequence. It's like that match state doesn't exist in this sequence. In order to model this observation, you're going to have a specific state just to skip over match states. We will call these states delete states. And parts of the alignment that are noisy. Look at this part, for example. Some sequences have additional ACTC, and some sequences don't have this. But parts of the alignment that are not conserved, which means the sequences may have anything in that doesn't it doesn't prevent them being a member of this family. For example, this AGA, ATC doesn't have this middle part in a sequence, but it's still a member of this family because the other conserved parts are greatly contained here in this sequence, in this fourth sequence. These parts, these addition, and also in having emitted some symbols in these positions also does not prevent this from being the member of this family. We are going to again have designated types of states to model that kind of behavior. Okay, here is what a profile hidden Markov model is. A profile hidden Markov model is going to have designated states for its conserved columns. So you can consider this as such. Given a protein sequence alignment of a family of sequences, the conserved columns, our first job is going to identify which parts of these sequences are conserved. And we are going to have a single match state for each of those, for every one of those conserved columns, we are going to have a specific match state for each one of them. And therefore, the length of the profile hidden Markov model, how many of these rectangular states it's going to have, is solely determined by how many conserved regions, how many conserved columns, positions this family have. And after that, for each of these match states, there are two accompanying states, as you can see. There are different states. These diamond ones, the green ones, are used to model insertions that may come after this match state. Okay, so between this conserved column and the next conserved column, if one sequence emits some symbols that are not necessarily important to being part of this family, this insertion state, visiting that and emitting those additional symbols will model that observation. And if one sequence, for example, also we are going to have these circular states, which we are going to name them as delete states. Okay, these delete states, their main purpose is to skip over a match state. For example, if one sequence doesn't contain this conserved column in it, doesn't. What does it mean? Doesn't contain? It means that it doesn't have a nucleotide or an amino acid that is aligned to that position, which means that in that sequence there's a gap in that match state. In that case, we will be using these delete states to skip over those match states, and we may skip, actually, this is not a final model we're going to use, because it's possible to skip multiple times. For example, it's possible to go from here to the next delete state and this one, and maybe skip over multiple states. Skipping over multiple match states is also possible. Some of the arrows between, some of the transitions between these states are not shown here. The final model we're going to use, I think it's going to be this. Okay, so if you look at this, this is like a template that we are going to use. I call this template because if you just consider a single column of this template, look at this one. This will be used to model a single conserved position in a multiple sequence alignment. If we have 4 conserved columns in a multiple sequence alignment, this is exactly the Markov model we use. But if we have, for example, 10 conserved columns in a multiple sequence alignment, what are we going to do? We are going to get this block copied over and over again here in between these two things, and it's going to be longer, but it's the states are going to, the template is going to be preserved. So in other words, consider this, you can enlarge this by adding more of these 3 states one after another in the model. So this is a hidden profile hidden Markov model, which is a very common model used to model protein sequence families. There are variations of those. In some profile hidden Markov models, you may see some of the transitions missing, or you may, for example, see something, an arrow from end state to the begin state, or there may be local alignment. Let me show you those variations quickly, but we're going to be focusing on this variation only. So this one, it looks like the same thing, but you see there are 2 different states. So there are some variations here. This is for local alignments. There is some variation which allows you to go overlap alignments. So there are some variations of these transitions. Repeat alignments, if certain thing is repeated again and again, it's possible to look at this. Look at this part. Imagine this is a motif that is repeated within the sequence. After we come to the final conserved region, what do? We may come to this state, come to this state, come to this one, and repeat the same thing again. So it's possible to repeat this over and over again until we arrive at the end state. So how many times it repeats in a sequence is also will determine your transition probabilities here. But these variations, these are on these slides only for you to keep in mind that this is just a template that people uses most popularly, but it's not the only profile hidden Markov model template that can be used for different specific purposes. We may have different profile hidden Markov models. So let me repeat, these are the insertion states, these are the delete states, and these are the match states. And how do we determine how many match states are there going to be in a profile hidden Markov model? Now, in the last 5 minutes, I just want to build you a hidden Markov model for the sample midterm should contain a hidden Markov model question. Let's see. Let me go to the sample midterm, and yeah, here we go. Look at this. Now, let me zoom in a little bit more and get only this part, so which excludes the solution to part C. Now I'm going to copy it here. Okay, look at this one. let's move it to someplace here. And let me flatten my image now. All right, so this is a multiple sequence alignment that is given to us. And here in this question, the conserved regions, conserved columns are already indicated by these asterisk marks below the columns. So this one, this pattern here that we see, or this multiple sequence alignment, this family of genomic sequences, how many of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are given to us in this question, and they also, which columns are going to be conserved columns are also given to us. So in other words, I'm going to have a profile hidden Markov model that looks like this. Why do I have 4 of them? The first and the last state here are designated begin and end states that do not do anything actually. There is no emission of symbols here. So there are some exceptions to symbol emission thing. For example, the delete states, I'm going to draw it like this. I'm going to have the insertions right above them. And I'm going to also have an insertion at the beginning here. And each of these insertions are going to model the insertions that may come after the match states. So I need only an additional state. Usually this one is labeled as I0, the 0th insertion state, I1 and I2, and M1 and M2. And I'm going to also have delete states, delete 1 and delete 2. So these are all the states I need to model this alignment because I have 2 conserved columns. Now, here is a very important piece of information that I'm going to give you. The gaps you see in these alignments, the gaps will have different meanings if they, depending on whether they appear on a conserved column or not. Okay, so this gap here is very different than this gap here. Okay, they will be treated as very separate things. Also this gap here. These 2 gaps, these are special gaps which deserve a special color. All right, so look at this gap here, this gap here. These 2 gaps that are marked are going to be modeled differently than the other gaps that are here. And biologically, that also makes sense, right? Because this gap here is telling me that in this family, in which 80% of the family members have this G in this conserved position, this family member does not have that G conserved. Or again, in this second conserved position, the third sequence does not have this conserved position which with 75% T and 25% Cs. The conserved column, the conserved position is skipped over. It doesn't exist in this particular sequence. So therefore, these gaps are very special gaps. And these gaps will be modeled by these delete states. The other gaps that appear elsewhere, they are actually just ignored because it means that it's not important for the family. What does it mean to not emit any? Because these are the conserved parts. All the other parts of the sequence, the hidden Markov model, profile hidden Markov model, is used to model the conserved regions of a sequence. All the other parts that are in the alignment are just like treated like noise. Ignore those parts. I mean, if some sequence is emitted in those parts, they are just going to be treated as noise, and that's the purpose of these insert states, to model how much noise is emitted, how long that noise is going to be emitted, what type of noise that is emitted. For example, between 2 match states, no noise is emitted, right? I mean, there is no insertion. The 2 match states are just consecutive. They are one after another. There is no additional amino acids in the or nucleotides in the alignment. In other words, this I1 state actually will never be used. It will never be visited by M1. For example, if you look at the 5 sequence, actually there are 4 sequences. that have visited M1 state. Sequences 2, 3, 4, and 5 visit M1 state. By the way, the alignment problem that we gave earlier, if I give you some sequence, for example, ACGT, what is the most likely sequence of states to be emitted by this profile hidden Markov model, most likely that visited by this sequence? I told you that this is difficult to compute. We are going to use the Viterbi algorithm for this, right? But given a multiple sequence alignment, for each of these sequences, which states are visited one after another is given in the multiple sequence alignment. The way that the alignment itself contains the information as to which states are visited by each of these sequences one by one. Okay, now I'm going to tell you with another color, with green color, I'm going to tell something, and I'm going to continue this on Monday. But I just want to tell you that the region before the first conserved column, this part, this is the first noisy region. The first noisy region is this state, I0 is responsible from this noisy region. So if a sequence contains some noisy region initially, it's from the begin state, it's going to go to I0 state. If it emits more than one noisy nucleotides, it's going to keep visiting the insert state. And after that, it's going to come to either match state, or maybe it may go to delete state like the first sequence. So 4 of these, not 4, we are going to see how we compute this transition. I'm going to continue with the same example on Monday, but the main purpose of this lecture was really to go over the general hidden Markov model and what these states' purposes are. So this part, I0 is responsible from this. Okay, I1 would be responsible between the some insertions between these two conserved states if there were any. But since there are no noisy nucleotides that are observed in this family between these two consecutive states, therefore there is no use for I1 in this particular protein family. And I2's main purpose is to model the final noisy output before we arrive at the end of the alignment. Okay, so we are going to see how we can compute these transition probabilities, how we can compute emission probabilities at M1 and M2, but you may actually guess what we are going to do. We're just going to do counting. For example, can you tell me, I'm going to end after that, the first sequence. Look at the first sequence. Let me erase all these additional stuff here. And now look at the first sequence, GAT. So this is the first sequence, GATT. And the sequence is not just given to me as GATT here, it's aligned. So a multiple sequence alignment is provided to me. So I know which particular column belongs to what state. So what I'm going to do is this. Can you tell me which sequence of states are visited by the first sequence? First, every one of them starts with begin. And from begin, this first sequence go to I0 to emit this G. And then go to I0 again to emit this A. And go to I0 again to emit this third letter. So it was at begin I0, 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 and then goes to delete one state because there's a gap in the first conserved column. So it skips over, it has to skip over the match state. And the only way it can do that is by visiting the D1 state. It deletes that, and from delete, it goes to match 2. It has this T. And after match 2, there is no additional thing at all, and it directly goes to the end state. So the sequence of states, as you can see, visited by the first sequence is already provided by the multiple sequence alignment. So what we're going to do is, in order to compute these transition probabilities, you're going to write the sequence of states visited by all these 5 sequences one by one. Then I'm going to just look at this. From the begin state, how many of them go to I0? How many of them go to match 1? How many of them go directly to delete state? Is there anybody who goes to delete state directly from begin? No. you're going to see that from the begin state, we are going to have 4 begin I0 transitions and 1 transition which says begin M1. The last sequence, if you look at the 5th sequence, from begin, there is no I0 needed. It directly goes to M1 state. So in other words, this transition probability is going to be 0.8, which is 4 over 5. This is going to be 0.2, which is 1 over 5. And we are going to do the same thing for all of these transitions to build the transition probabilities. All right? So that's it from me for today. Sorry for spending additional 7 minutes, but I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any. Let me stop the recording at this point.